Welcome back. We've been doing a few things together over the last few courses, and they have revolved around getting to know some important people who developed research methods and who use research methods in ways which sometimes were admirable and sometimes which weren't so good. So we looked at Malinowski, we looked at Margaret Mead, we've looked at the controversies between Margaret Mead and Derek Freeman. I introduced you to a guy called James Scott, who is a wonderful describer of peasant life and has done a lot of work amongst people in northern Malaysia. We're going to be introducing some more of these types of videos, which is going to make it just a bit more interesting for you to interact with new ideas and new methods. In my opinion, far more interesting than me talking to camera the way that I am now, or me summarizing articles from dictionaries and reference works, which you will need to do because this is a directed reading course. But what I wanted to do is to just briefly pause. We will be introducing some other documentaries on all sorts of topics, about ethnographic writing, about ethnic studies, more about participant observation and fieldwork. But let's just pause and I want us to go back to the Google Drive, which is the place where all of this electronic data, all of these electronic resources, books, reference books and monographs and articles and audio versions of some articles and books, as well as the YouTube channel. All of this is placed there together in one place for you. But I think it might be good occasionally to remind ourselves about where to go so that you can take charge of your own learning. And so let's just go back to the Google Drive. Now, you may have already taken the time to look around the Google Drive. And as is often the case, the links to the Google Drive, you presumably have a link to your Google Drive on your browser by now. You may have put a bookmark on that Google Drive. It is possible that you've also bookmarked or even subscribed to the YouTube channel that the Faculty of Sociology and Anthropology at Thammasat University have set up. But let's go to the Google Drive again, and what I want to do is I want to just have a look around with you at the interface. And I want us to remind each other about how we can do searches and the importance of choosing the right view option. Now, you would have presumably remembered the emphasis I placed when we did some introductory lectures on some basic study in IT skills about the importance of using the right views in Mac Finder or Windows Explorer. Okay, so let's just go back to the Google Drive, and I'm going to press here, and that's going to take me to the Google Drive. Okay, so you actually may be more of an expert on Google Drives than I am. If you are very familiar with the Google architecture, it's possible that you went to a school which used Chromebooks, which required you to submit all of your assignments on Google Docs, and you might have had access to a Google Drive. You will know how you can move whole directories from this Google Drive onto your Google Drive. At the moment, there's about 7 gigs up there. That is likely to increase, but you can load specific folders and specific files that you are particularly needing. And so you are able to share this, you are able to copy this to your Google Drive, you are able to download individual documents, and of course, to state the obvious, you just click the download. I'm going to be spending most of my time in the electronic library. And I think that it's a good idea to remind ourselves about some of the facilities that we have here. For example, we are able to put stars to specific documents. We are able to choose more than one view. Now, I prefer to see things as lists, but if I choose this view, after we give the computer a bit of time, it allows us to have a look at the covers of books that are on there. And just to reiterate something that I said before, in the past, we had physical libraries that we became familiar with. We could go into a library. We knew in that corner of the library, on that floor, there were the books that I would be needing. The reference books are in that part of the library. I can go and we all had favourite reference books and favourite books that were go-to books for us. And so we need to be familiar with them. We need to recognise the authors. We need to recognise the name. And so it is sometimes nice to have the view here. Now, another function which I wanted to point out. If I press on a book that I've uploaded onto this folder, then we have a number of options appear up here. I can send links, I can copy it to people, but this one is something which I want us to have a look at. And this is a preview function. This allows me to have a quick look through the document from Google Drive without actually me having to open it at all. And so I can either click here with the mouse, or I can just use the right arrow if I use the right arrow on my keyboard, that will go to the next document. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. What I can do is I can press on this button. What I can do here is I can move down. I can move down like that, and I can scroll. Depending on your computer, you can use a trackpad or a mouse with a wheel on it, and you can scroll down. And why is this so useful? Well, for a number of reasons, the most important of which is I am able to take it down to the table of contents. And that allows me to have a look to see if there's any specific things that I'm interested in. Now, let's do this. Let's go back. Okay, so renewing that. Regardless of the view, if I press on a file and I press preview, then I can look down by scrolling, and I don't have to go back. All I have to do is to click on to the next ebook in this particular file. There are other things that you can do. You can move, and of course you can download. Now, all of these files that I have uploaded are on in my academic library, and what I've done is I've tagged these with this tag here. And so all of the, let me just do that again, all of these, let's do this again. I go here and I put in as a tag, I say I want to look at filed ebooks, and I want to see everything that is up on the drive there. Okay, and so we have just had a look and we sort that alphabetically. And so this is, if I'm interested and I think that I'm really going to be using these books, then find specific books and then download them onto your hard drive, and then you'll be able to search them. But let's go back to the Google Drive, and let's just remind ourselves about the different types of searches. Okay, so I can specify what to search, and I have a number of search tools. I can decide on type about whether I want to search PDFs, and I can choose an item name. So for example, we've got Freeman, Derek Freeman. I've got Derek Freeman there. And if I press there I have the cover. So if I go into the search options, so I go to search, now I go to search, and I go to search tools. I am searching PDFs, and I can search the name of the file, which is very, very important if we have a specific reference that we're wanting to see. But also I am able to search inside a PDF on the Google Drive. So what I can do here, I'm wanting to Derek Freeman. So if I press search, these are files that have the word Derek Freeman. Now let's just do an experiment. I'm going to search. I'm going to search options. I'm going to search for PDFs. And then I'm going to search for, and I'm going to put in quotation marks, Derek Freeman. And then I'm going to press search. Okay, so if I want to find out if I want to know more, I can open these ebooks individually. Okay, so that is just a bit more detail about the interface, about the different views you can use, about the way that you can search for key names, for the title of the file, or you can actually specify, look for this word or these phrases within the Google Drive. You are able to star books that for you are particularly useful. There are a number of other functions, and my strong advice to you is to just begin to play around. Remember, we like to play when we are in toy mode, but sometimes really one of the ways that we can turn toys into tools is actually by playing around, but with a purpose. So for example, we are able to, in the details, what we can do here is we can add information about about the file, and then when I go back, I can actually specify I want you to search comments that I've written in the details. So that is a very, very useful and potentially powerful function. Okay, so we've dealt with a bit more about the interface and the view options. Let's go back to talking a bit more about contents. And the first thing, again, I've got the link to the Google Drive there. The first thing that I wanted to say is that the vast majority of the content are ebooks. The vast majority of the content that I've uploaded are the ebooks. Now, I'm going to get out of presentation mode so that you can see the wider mind map that I'm using. And you'll see here that there are a number of ebooks, and I'm just going to briefly increase this so that you can see it. So the ebooks range from a toolkit to action research. This is a very, very useful book. It is by a very well-known anthropologist called Alan Barnard, and it is in the Encyclopedia of Social and Cultural Anthropology. It has short articles on a range of subjects. And if we had the time, we could just show you around. But there are many different reference books there. Take your time to have a look at them. This one isn't what I had in mind. The Handbook of Methods in Cultural Anthropology. A very, very good handbook that has a range of articles on very, very useful topics, including one that we've talked about, and we will talk about this a bit more. In later lectures, we're going to be talking about participant observation, and I'm just scrolling down a bit too far, but that's okay. So I really recommend you having a bit of a look around this, this collection of ebooks. Later on in the course, I'm going to be providing suggested readings, recommended readings, and required reading. But I don't actually want to make you, I don't really want to require you to do too many things. What I want you to do is to become animated and excited at the access that you have to all of these electronic resources. So we've dealt with a number of things. We have got reference books. The reference books are the first type of ebook. And now let's go and talk a bit about monographs. Now, it might be good for me to remind you what a monograph is and isn't. A monograph is not a reference book. A monograph is not a handbook. A monograph is a book-length study by one person, usually has a single author. And this is the book that I recommended to you, written by James Scott, and we've learned a bit about him. And this is his monograph, and it's up there for you to have a look at. Now you will be reading sections of this. You will be reading sections of this when we talk about ethnographic writing, because to my mind, James Scott, as someone who's worked in the Malay world for many years, to my mind, James Scott has done some of the best jobs at describing the everyday interactions and everyday forms of resistance between Malay village folks. And so that's a monograph. Now, I have already opened this book, and I'm going to open it again. This is a book that I mentioned in a previous lecture, and here we have the table of contents. and you'll see the table of contents. It's about a 300-page book. 200 chapter 20 starts on page 294. So it's a reasonably thorough, reasonably long monograph. Now, as an experiment, this is an experimental course. As an experiment, the other important piece of content on the Google Drive are some audio versions of articles and books that I would like to encourage you to interact with. So let's do this together. What I'm going to do is I'm going to press on this link, which will take me to a part on the Google Drive which is in the audio section, and I've just clicked on this file. So once more, the link took you to a file named audio, and this will take you to this version. Now what I want to do is this. I am going to split the screen, and I'm going to get out of there. I'm going to close that, and I'm going to go down to the start of chapter number 1. Oh, have we got, is this the preface? Let me check. Just 1 minute. The audio, and I have got, and we are on the preface, and the preface begins here. So let's have a look at this together.
By far the most widely known of Margaret Mead's numerous books is Coming of Age in Samoa, based on fieldwork on which she embarked in 1925 at the instigation of Franz Boas, her professor at Columbia University. Boas had sent the 23-year-old Mead to Samoa to study adolescence, and she returned with the startling conclusion: adolescence was known in America and Europe as a time of emotional stresses and conflicts. If, Mead argued, these problems were caused by the biological processes of maturation, then they would necessarily be found in all human societies. But in Samoa, she reported, life was easy and casual, and adolescence was the easiest and most pleasant time of life. Thus, in anthropological terms, according to Mead, Samoa was a negative instance, and the existence of this one counterexample demonstrated that the disturbances associated with 18 preface adolescence in the United States and elsewhere had cultural...
Okay, so people learn to read in all sorts of different ways. We all have different personality and different learning styles. And it is a common problem throughout the world. As someone who's taught native English speakers, it is a very, very common problem to find students being reluctant to read or claiming that they don't learn that way. Now, there are all sorts of ways that children learn how to read, and there are all sorts of ways for people for whom reading is an important part of their professional life, about how they read more and read easier. There are all sorts of ways of reading. Now, I think I mentioned to you in a previous lecture that I, for a number of years now, have made a habit of digitizing. I've taken a PDF, of exporting that as a text. I've taken the text and exporting that text as an MP3 or other sound file. And so when I'm traveling, for example, I listen to all of this on my headphones while I'm traveling, driving to the airport, checking in, waiting for the flight, flying, disembarking, picking up my bags, hopping in the taxi to my first meeting. And I would strongly like to encourage you to consider setting yourself the task of opening a PDF and listening to a version, an audio version of the book. It will take you a bit of time. You may get to the point where you can actually read faster than you can listen, but it is probably going to be less effort. When you come across a word that you don't understand, you can pause the audio and you can highlight the word and then you can look it up. There are all sorts of what you can just copy it into Google. You can download a dictionary and have that on hand at the click of a button. You can translate this. And if you do this on a regular basis, you will find that your vocab grows. You will become more confident in pronouncing words because you are reading them at the same time as you hear them. And you may say, this is just science fiction. Well, it's not. It is not science fiction. This is the way that we can learn language. Okay, so finally, having mentioned the interface, reminded you that there are reference books as well as monographs. We'll talk about articles later in the readers. Let me just mention to you that I've got an EndNote library. For those of you who haven't seen EndNote, this is an EndNote library. This is what an EndNote library looks like. And I use these EndNote references. I insert them into a Word document, and that does my citations automatically. In addition to this, what I've also done is I have uploaded we'll just open this file. I've uploaded a bibliography where all of the books which I have uploaded, the references that I've uploaded follow a simplified author date system. Why? Because if I have the author's name and if I have as much of the title as I can, it's very easy for me to do first searches through it's easy for me to do a quick initial search through my hard drive to see books on this topic, research, methods, participant observation, or specific people. I may be interested in just searching the word Thailand or ethnic. But this is the complete bibliography of all the ebooks uploaded onto the electronic library. So, I hope that you have found this lecture helpful. We have just gone through and reminded ourselves about the Google Drive. We've taken a closer look around, having spent some time looking at some videos, some YouTube videos on the YouTube channel, and it's time for us to move on to our next topic in the course. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you again soon.